Well, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock and it's time for a little chat. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gary Beck from Maximum Wellbeing, and this afternoon we're talking once again a little bit more about minerals, a little bit more about magnesium. And today I want to just cover off a little bit about the different types, different forms of magnesium that you will potentially see around. There's lots of different products available, lots of different brands, lots of different forms, lots of different fancy labels, and of course they all have their place. But let's just backtrack a little bit and just remind you that magnesium is the fourth most abundant mineral in your body, fourth most abundant mineral in the body, and as a result it's involved in hundreds of metabolic reactions. The suggestion is over 300 different reactions in the body that are essential for your health. And we also know that low levels of magnesium are linked to a whole host of different illnesses or problems, and that could include pushing you down the path of type 2 diabetes. It could be pushing you down the path of heart disease. It could be exacerbating mood disorders, depression, and it could also be associated with things like migraines. So these are, not uncommon, unfortunately, and could be particularly debilitating for people that are suffering these things or struggling with these things over a period of time. We've also talked about the fact that we can get magnesium from a whole host of different foods, and that includes things like good old green leafy vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and so on and so forth. Staying away from the processed grains and the processed foods, and working to minimize your stress, keeping well hydrated, and just eating real food. We also know that 2/3 of the population or more, even some suggest even higher, is not getting enough magnesium from their diet. It's just not adequate to supply them with what their body is demanding. So with that in mind, let's look at the different forms of magnesium and what perhaps those different forms are going to be best for. And I've got a few different ones here. This is a little magnesium glycinate capsule. We've got magnesium in a powder, and as I say, they all have their place, but many of us will have our own favorites, I guess. So starting, let's look at a product. Often the magnesium forms are bound with a different amino acids, and different amino acids will give them slightly different characteristics. That's going to result in slightly different ways that they cause actions or reactions in the body, and it's going to also impact on how bioavailable those particular types of magnesium are, how easy it is for your body to absorb them. So the first one is a product called magnesium glycinate. So glycinate, this is when the magnesium is bound to an amino acid called glycine. And for some people, the glycinate product can make quite a difference regards its calming effect and the effect with magnesium that magnesium can have on things like anxiety and depression, or even potentially insomnia. There's not a lot of research really highlighting its efficacy in those sort of conditions, but that's sort of one of the trains of thought. It's going to be that particular form of magnesium in its natural form is going to be found mostly in the protein-rich foods, the meats, the dairy products, the fish or legumes. So those are going to be the natural sources of a magnesium bound with glycine. So magnesium bound with that particular type of amino acid. Amino acids, remember, are from protein. Mentioning magnesium glycinate, I need to also mention one called magnesium bisglycinate. So a variation on the theme. There are some really quite nice bisglycinate products out there, and they have shown to be really quite bioavailable in their form. And in fact, this one here, this little capsule here, is a magnesium bisglycinate that I do use from time to time. Once again, it comes down to the individual, what's going on, what their requirements are, and is that product testing appropriate for that individual. Another one that you might see around is magnesium lactate. So as the name suggests, another magnesium form that's bound with lactic acid. So lactate from lactic acid. So this is actually commonly used as a food additive, in fact, a food additive, and it helps to regulate the acidity and is used to sort of fortify a variety of processed foods and drinks, beverages in general. And the suggestion is that it's quite effective. It's relatively gentle on your digestive system, so it's perhaps more appropriate for those people that are needing a higher dose of magnesium for whatever reason, and it's not going to have the same potential for upsetting bowel function. Next, let's move on to magnesium taurate. Magnesium taurate, once again, another amino acid chelation, where this time it's the amino acid taurine bound to the magnesium. And it's quite an interesting little beast. So the taurate gives it a bit more of a focus on cardiovascular stuff. So there is quite a recent animal study that suggests that it can actually help to reduce blood pressure when it's given at quite high levels. Now that was in rats, so we can't really say that it does reduce your blood pressure, but it certainly may well improve overall heart health. So blood sugar, blood pressure, those are the areas where the magnesium taurate may be more appropriate. Moving along, we'll go to magnesium L-threonate. So this is a fancier type of magnesium that's probably less known. So this is, once again, a mixture of magnesium and threonic acid. And the threonic acid is actually a metabolite from vitamin C, in fact. So it's one of the things that are broken down from vitamin C. So there's some suggestion that this particular form of magnesium could enhance things like your brain function. There's a little neurotransmitter known as GABA. And the L-threonate and things like L-threonine, magnesium, and the B6 are things that we know can help with the increase in the production of GABA for those that need it. And GABA is one of those things where if you are experiencing any degree of memory loss, perhaps, and inability to recall and stuff like that, it could be that GABA is in fact the missing component in your body. So it's actually a neurotransmitter, and this particular form of magnesium could potentially help improve the body's innate production and use of GABA. Moving along to another one, magnesium sulfate. So as the name suggests, magnesium bound with sulfur, and it's commonly known as good old Epsom salt. So it's obviously the thing we use when we're needing to soothe our aching muscles and so forth. We throw it into the bath, and there's a nice way to soak if you've had some sort of hard-on sporting activity or hard-on physical exercise where your body's just feeling a little bit worn after that. It can help you sort of release and relax the stressed muscles that are a result of lots of exercise. Magnesium malate is the next one. So malate is, or malic acid bound with magnesium, and this is a form that naturally occurs in fruits and wine. So magnesium malate and that malic acid, it's the thing that sort of gives a fruit or a beverage that sort of sour tart taste. It's also used as a flavour enhancer, if you like, in food additives, and to sort of shift that acidity when that's the sort of sensation that food people are looking for. As far as a supplement, it's actually relatively easily absorbed. Once again, may have a slightly less laxative effect than some other cheaper products, and once again, although there's little science behind it, it's suggested that this is perhaps one of the better forms when we're looking at muscular aches and conditions associated with fibromyalgia. Yeah, so next one, Magnesium Orotate. I hope everyone's taking notes down there. Or in fact, if you're needing some help with that, you can perhaps just send me a message and I'll be happy to send you a little list of these types of magnesiums and what they may be best for. So yeah, that's certainly a possibility. You just need to send me a message and I'll see if I can create a wee document to zip out to you. Magnesium Orotate is the next one I want to mention. So this is magnesium combined with orotic acid. And this is a really interesting one. It's about the construction or creation of basic sort of DNA, genetic material. So it's actually doesn't have very strong laxative effects. It's actually quite easily absorbed once again, and it's suggested that it is particularly good at helping blood vessel, artery health and that sort of thing. So quite an interesting form of magnesium once again. We'll go to a simple magnesium chloride, so magnesium thrown together with chlorine, and yeah, it's potentially going to be used to treat constipation and those sort of things. Doesn't need a huge amount to actually give a little bit of action to the bowel for some people. It's a relatively inexpensive form of magnesium, and it's probably not the sort of thing that I'd be suggesting people get into really raising your magnesium levels. It's more used for getting movement in the gut and the bowel. And as is the next one, I'll talk about magnesium oxide. So this is magnesium combined with oxygen, which is kind of interesting. There's a number of products that are used as laxatives, which are basically just this form of magnesium. They might have one or two other things in it, but sometimes it's just a good big hit of magnesium oxide. Some people do find it helps to give a relief of heartburn, but it's once again not the form of magnesium to use when we're trying to boost or lift your magnesium level. It's not really going to get into the cells and so forth. And that sort of brings me to a form of magnesium which is relatively simple, but still right up there when it comes to the preferred forms or the sources that I use. And this is magnesium citrate. So this is magnesium bound with citric acid, as the name would suggest. So it's that citric acid, of course, is once again the acidy, sour element that you find in citrus fruits that gives them that tart, sour flavour. And yes, it is really quite well absorbed, can be used to treat constipation or other things, but it's more about building your levels up and fortifying the body's level. So the magnesium citrate, is probably the magnesium I use the most of. There are other ones around, there are things like, you'll see magnesium combinations these days. Another one that I quite like use is a magnesium form known as magnesium glycerophosphate. So there's, often you'll see sort of 2 or 3 different types of magnesium bound together. And that's quite a good idea because, of course, they have a slight variation in where they're going to be used and how they're going to be used by the body. So in some cases, that's quite appropriate. But the good old citrate, once again, in a capsule form like this, is quite a nice way. Although, to be fair, I've actually had customers that I've had using the citrate in a capsule like this, and then I've flicked them over to using a powder, such as this little guy here, and the powder, although they're both magnesium citrate, the powder, in fact, has resulted in a far better end result for the client. And I've had this quite a lot. So that's where we come to this particular product. It's called magnesium diasporol. And we know that in the studies, because this particular product has a lot of research behind it, it's water soluble, it does get into the cells, and this will actually very effectively shift your magnesium levels up. and there's not a lot of research done on the different forms to see, well, do they actually get into the cell where they're needed? And we know that this particular product does. I've been to lectures where a professor who's done a lot of research into minerals over many, many years talked about some of the studies they've done about, on this particular product. And one of them, he suggests that they probably wouldn't get away with doing this research now because they basically dug a little device into the thigh muscles of some willing participants to actually measure how much magnesium, when ingested, was making it into the muscle, into the tissue, into the cells. So yeah, you can imagine having something dug into your thigh muscle to actually measure that. Probably not a lot of fun, but they were willing participants at the time, and they probably got paid to do that. But it's the sort of thing, the sort of extreme level that sometimes you need to go to, because it's very difficult to measure magnesium levels in the blood or accurately reflect what's happening in the cells by measuring things in the blood. And this is not only the case for magnesium, it's also why I prefer to use the Thyroflex testing mechanism for testing thyroid function, because we know that blood tests for thyroid are notoriously unable to detect those sort of low levels of dysfunction. Whereas when we're looking at this kind of thing, the testing of the diasporol going into the cells, into the muscle, we know that it's there, we know that it's working, we know that when you're ingesting it, there is a change in levels. Likewise, when I'm testing a thyroid, we're actually testing the functionality of the body. So very different to just looking at the levels of things in the blood, which may or may not be accurate and may or may not give us the information we're needing. So yeah, that's probably all we need to say today. Magnesium comes in all different shapes and forms. You can choose what you prefer. There's obviously tablets, there's capsules, there's powders, there's liquids, there's magnesium that can be applied externally. And remember, when we're wanting to improve our cellular level of magnesium, it's going to have to be ingested. We know that things like this, the diasporol, definitely do get in. Yes, it's not the cheapest on the market, but at the end of the day, you can take a $30 supplement and you might absorb half of that. You might take a $50 supplement and absorb all of it. So, how do you really work out the value? It's one of those things where just the straight dollar value off the top may not really tell you how much value it's delivering for your body, for your cells, for your blood. So I hope you've found that insightful, and feel free to hit me up if you need any information, or if you want to start using something like a diasporol. It's just a matter of sending a message and we can get something happening for you straight away. So it's a Friday afternoon, time to say goodbye, and wish you well for the weekend. This is Gary Beck from Maximum Wellbeing signing off. Have fun, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.